All right, folks, I am headed to work here. It is a snowy day in Seattle, which is kind of funny because no one knows how to drive in the snow. We'll see how this goes. I do have my Insta360 hooked up for the first voyage. I am super nervous about losing it, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I was like hauling on it and it's not seeming to budge, but I'm just like super nervous about having this thing on the top of my car. So we'll see how it goes. I have a topic for today. It's going to be about tracking progress. One sec. And the topic comes from Reddit, but this is something that I've seen come up like many times. And I think it's a good one. I try to have conversations with my engineers about this kind of stuff. The main thing here that I want to kind of clarify, and I'm going to talk about different ways to approach this kind of stuff, but when we're talking about performance reviews and things like that and being able to talk about making progress, having meaningful impact, like the takeaway from this video hopefully is that you don't want to just like forget about this kind of stuff. It's I think it's too easy to go a long period of time, whatever that looks like. When I say long period of time, that could be, you know, if you're doing performance reviews once a year, like, you know, do you wait the full year to try and recap on all the things you've done, or whatever that interval is, right? I think there's strategies that we can use to do better than that. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you have questions that you want answered, leave them in the comments below. And if you have something that you want to be kept anonymous, or you want to write more detail, just look for Dev Leader on social media and send me a message, or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn, and happy to try and answer your questions about software engineering and sort of career development in software engineering. So the first thing that I want to say is that as we go into this, there's going to be different tools, techniques, and stuff. So we'll go through a handful of different things, but I don't want you to take what I'm saying as a prescription, like you must do it this way, this is the only way for it to work, because different people will absolutely have different experiences here. So some things may work really well for some people, and others might say like absolutely not. So the most basic thing that I'll talk about is like, and I know this works better for me, is like, and this is more from like a to-do list perspective, but I just want to touch on this. It's like I actually need to write things down, which sounds kind of funny. But I need to be able to write things down, or else like I don't stay on top of them. So I find that written stuff is really helpful for me. It becomes more meaningful. I don't understand why. I wish that I could just pull up any digital app for tracking stuff and feel like it's effective for me, but it's just not. So I like to write things down. But one of the differences I would say is that, or like one of the drawbacks from writing stuff down for me still, is that when it comes time to recall things over a long period of time, that's not super effective for me. So I find that writing stuff down is effective because I do it. It's effective because if I need to follow up on stuff, I don't know, something about it allows me to be able to take action and feel like I'm making progress. But for long-term things, sorry, I have to stop here for this construction. But for long-term things, if I need to recall them, what I don't want to do is go through pages and pages and pages of notes, especially because there's going to be so much stuff in there that's just like, it'll feel like noise in terms of tracking impact, because it's going to be like everything that my brain is not able to keep up with, and I need to have it written down. So point of this is saying that like I need written things for tracking, but you may want to use something different for your sort of like to-do list versus tracking accomplishments. So just a heads up there, just different tools, and kind of use what you have to explore and find what's going to work for you, okay, in terms of the implementation of it. So with that out of the way, I think one of the most basic things that I've recommended to people, like most low-tech kind of thing you can do, is, in my opinion, just like have a draft email to yourself. It's nice because you can have it sort of wherever your email client is, right? So you don't have to, I don't know, like if you use Gmail and you want to have it stored there, like that's fine. I would, depending on, if that's not what you're using for work, maybe not, because you probably want to, if you have like, work specific things like proprietary information you want to write down, probably don't want to have that in your personal email per se, but where the reason I said Gmail is just because of having different clients and stuff. So like we use Outlook at Microsoft, obviously, and Exchange for email. So, I would be using that. Where I used to work, I can't remember anymore. Like, yeah, we must have had Outlook. Like, it's funny because the email culture was so different, but it must have been an Exchange server and had Outlook. But some people will have like, Google Workplace stuff, like depends wherever you're working, but having the ability to access that on your phone, wherever, it's just really convenient to be able to jot stuff down. But the whole idea with the draft email is that like, it's just like a notepad, right? So, and having it kind of synchronized or on a system that is specific for work is kind of nice. But you can literally just leverage an email to yourself to take notes. What I would personally recommend is I would be more verbose than not. So, find your own style, obviously. But if you're like, I don't know, I don't want to say when inspiration strikes, but when you like remember like, hey, like maybe I should talk about this accomplishment, or I've hit a milestone in this project, or it's been a period of time. We'll kind of talk about this a little bit more, but when you feel like you have something or you recall or whatever, like this moment strikes where you're like, hey, I should document this, I would err on the side of including more details in your notes. The reason I say that is because in the moment, it might be very obvious to you, which is great. But the reality is that at the time you need to go recall it, it might not be so obvious. So when you add more detail, when you have to go recall this stuff, it might be that there's too much information. But personally, I would much rather sift through too much information and try to extract the more important parts. So that's what I would recommend on that. One second. Just getting on the highway here. We're gonna see if I still have a camera by the time I get to work. It would be pretty crappy if it's off my car, because that's like $1,000 in equipment just gone. But we'll see. Like I said, I was hauling on it. Didn't seem like it was going anywhere. But I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know if you can probably tell if you watch my other videos, I feel very nervous right now. That's all I have to say about it, is like, just nervous. I think once I get more used to it, I'd really like to find a way to like, I don't know, I like don't trust the suction cups, but this is a highly, ooh, it's wet here, highly reviewed, highly rated suction cup setup to mount. So I'm just like nervous about it, but we'll see. Also, should mention, because I said there's a lot of snow and stuff, like there isn't on the highway, but it's like it's very wet and kind of seems like a little bit slushy. But we'll see. So I have to be careful when I'm in the left lane. The highways and stuff here, I don't know why. We get so much rain, but these highways aren't designed to like handle like pooling of water very well. So going into the fast lane in some spots, like where I just drove past, can be a little bit of a, like, honestly, like a death trap, because anytime it rains really heavy back there, I always see cars that have like hit the wall. Pretty incredible that like it just isn't addressed. But anyway, so yeah, being verbose can be very helpful in your note taking, because when you need to go recall it, again, like, what would you rather have? Being like, I can't remember exactly what I meant here. I can't remember exactly what I was doing on this project or why it was important because my notes are so rough? Or would you rather be like, okay, I wrote a paragraph here and I really only need this one sentence. Let me just take that one sentence. Like, I know what I would rather opt for personally. So that's my recommendation when it comes to how you actually take your notes. Just be more verbose. Remember that you want to talk about, what's a good way to put this? It's not like did 10 pull requests or like, updated 5 unit tests. Like, that's not really the impactful part. See, this is a good example of the Insta360. This person's going less than the speed limit in the fast lane. So maybe, depending on how exciting this drive is, we'll send this one to the editor and he can show the traffic. I don't know, I'm kind of hoping there's something not like too exciting where it's dangerous, but like, I don't know, something fun to incorporate, especially given the stress I have with this thing strapped to my car right now. So you want to think about the impact, or how your work is relating to the things that are important that you've discussed with your manager. Okay, so when you're talking about promotion and like what's important to focus on, your manager is hopefully aligning with you on the things that you should focus on. And I think that is going to be a really good set of guidelines for what types of details to incorporate in your notes. So for example, if they've been saying, hey, like, we need to see that you're collaborating more with other people on different teams because of your seniority, that's more of an expectation now. Great, okay, when you're working on projects or you have, you're doing interactions with other teams, take a note of it, right? Collect that data, build up the evidence regarding that point specifically, right? You need to lead more design reviews. Awesome, okay, so next time you're doing a design review, take a note of it. If you're participating on them, so say it's someone else's design review, but you're doing a lot of, providing a lot of feedback, being actively involved, like that's related, right? It's adjacent to it. So mark that down. Like, try to think about the topics that you have talked to your manager about and record details that support those things. Because the way that I look at this when I'm working with my employees is that ideally through one-on-ones, I'm staying in tune with them on these accomplishments and these milestones throughout the year, right? Like, I don't want to get what would be I don't know, I would feel like I failed my team if someone showed up to me with their draft email, their notes kind of thing, and they're like, I want to talk about promotion or whatever else, or how I'm progressing. And then they start going through this list of things, and I'm like, I had no idea you were doing any of this. Like, to me, that would be like, I have failed my employee, because I want to make sure, I'm not going to know everything. It's impossible for me to know every detail, right? Every side conversation, every time someone thanks them for something, like, I won't know. But I should have a good idea of how things are progressing. So if someone showed up to me and I was completely shocked and I was like, I just didn't know any of this, I would feel not good. So with that said, when I work with my employees on this stuff, my point to them is like, hey, look, like, I don't want you to have to do this where you're like trying to, like, you feel like you're battling me to, like, I'm gatekeeping the promotion and like, I'm trying to do anything I can to not promote you, and you have to do everything you can to overcome the barrier I'm putting up. Like, that's not the goal. The goal for me is to say, like, look, like, I want everyone to get promoted. That's my goal, but I need to have evidence that you're ready for doing it. Because I'm not gonna go in front of my management, the leadership team, my peers, and say, yeah, my whole team is ready to get promoted, and then talk through individuals regarding why, and then feel like I have no actual evidence to support that. So what I try to remind my folks is that, like, if the more evidence and stuff you can collect about the things we talk about, like, for me, that's helpful. I will use that information to sort of assist my perspective as well. That way, when I go to talk about your accomplishments and stuff, I have more data points. It's supplementary to what I'm observing, and that way I can leverage that in conversations. So, like I said, it's not about trying to battle me for promotion. I never wanted to feel that way, but it's really about, like, help give me evidence to support this, right? And I try to make sure that I'm keeping things clear for them so that they understand. And that can be really challenging. Like, to be totally transparent, as a manager, it can be very challenging to make sure that people understand clearly. Because sometimes, like, one of the most, like, common cases I've found is that people are doing a really good job and they're on the right trajectory. And I'm sure, like, for many people listening to what I'm saying right now, this will be familiar, where it's like, hey, like, you're doing a good job. Keep going, and, like, just keep doing what you're doing, right? And that's, like, obviously that's not feedback I just want to give someone and stop there. But sometimes that's the sentiment, right? It's like, I think you're doing a good job, but I need to see more consistency and more time doing this. And that's sort of just the reality of it. So I try to make sure that when I feel like that's the feedback I want to give, that I can be a little bit more specific, right? Like, here are the projects that I think are really demonstrating this stuff. Here are these opportunities that I think will keep helping demonstrate that. And if we want to go beyond that, because I think that's an important part to talk about too, we want to go beyond that. Like, what could you be looking for as the next step, right? You're already, like, on the right trajectory. If you want to keep looking and getting challenged, like, here's something beyond that. So that can be a difficult conversation, not because it's like gonna upset someone, not difficult in that regard, but difficult to try and be transparent that, like, we need to see more time. Because then people are like, well, then give me a date. And it's like, it doesn't really quite work that way. Because if you're not consistent, or things come up and we can't really see that the consistency you're offering, then it's like, I can't give you a date. So it's really difficult to try and convey that in a clear way that feels fair. So my strategy around that is just trying to make sure more frequent conversations, which kind of brings me to this next point about tracking accomplishments, right? It's like, not only should you consider a frequency that works for you for documenting this stuff, right? So instead of just leaving it to chance that you're going to take notes, like, try to think about something that you feel like you can stick to, whether that's like every 2 weeks, maybe every Friday you try to take some notes, maybe it's once a month, whatever works for you. Find something and try to stick to it at a minimum cadence, right? Obviously, if something comes up and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good point, I should write it down, like, go do it. But try to set some minimum cadence. Now, in addition to that, because this is what I wanted to talk about, that's not just the note taking, is that I think that there's a way to amplify this that's not just, hey manager, I took notes for the last 6 months or last 12 months. Here's everything I have to talk about, and here's why I think I'm either ready for promotion, or here's all the evidence I have and want to talk about what the next step looks like. There's a nice blue BMW behind me. Maybe we'll get that one on the Insta360 if it's still on my car. We'll see. The idea is that instead of waiting for a long period of time, try to have regular conversations with your manager about this stuff. The difference, like, I know so people might hear this and say, okay, but I was told in one-on-ones they shouldn't just be a status update. Like, I shouldn't just tell my manager, here's my pull requests, here's the bugs I fixed, like, and just like kind of like a stand-up update. And you're right, like, I would ideally not want you to focus on that. Like, it's fine to talk about the things that you're working on, or if you're stuck, like, as someone who's a little bit more technical as a manager, at least with respect to code, I'm happy. Like if you're stuck on something and you're like, hey, could we carve out some time in our one-on-one, or like, could you look at this stack trace with me? Like if it just comes up, whatever, let's spend the time on it. But I would like for people to make some time for career conversations and progression. And I would say that, I let my employees drive their one-on-ones. If they want to talk about status updates, I'm not going to stop them. But I do try to make sure that if like my employees are only focused on that I try to remind them like, hey, like here's an opportunity where we can be talking about career stuff, or about progression, or about something else, so that it's a little bit less just like status updates. And sometimes I kind of have to push them on that, which is fine. But so in those conversations, right, like you could be saying, instead of, hey, like here's the pull request I landed, like what's the point of that pull request, right? Like what is it contributing towards? It's almost like we have to go one level up from that. It's not, hey, I landed these lines of code, or I added these tests, or I fixed this bug. Like, what is the impact of that? Because if you can bring up those milestones, right? Like, hey, like, yes, I got that pull request in, but now the feature that we've been working on for saving, for optimizing performance, we've now saved we're up to 10% in performance savings. Awesome. Okay, great. Like that's the milestone, right? Or, we unblocked this critical part of the project by working with this other team now. And so they're ready to deliver that. And that's thanks to these conversations we've been having in our collaborative sync meetings with these other groups, right? Like talk about those types of milestones and the impact they have. So again, it is like a bit of a status update, but we're up leveling it to be about the impact. And if you go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier, hopefully you've been having conversations with your manager about what to be focusing on, and try to bring those into the conversation, right? Manager said, hey, like we should be trying to get you to do more, leading or like mentoring the junior engineers on the team, right? You've got a strong technical base, which is awesome, but we want to see more with respect to mentorship. Okay, cool. Makes sense. Now, when you're trying to put this into action, you could be saying, hey, like the junior engineer X or whatever, so I'm going to switch lanes here. They're working on this project, and I kind of help them to reach this next milestone here. So like, there's an example of me, taking some initiative, working with them, mentoring them, that kind of thing. There's that BMW's in front of me now, and there's I don't know what kind of color that is. It's like a gray, it's like clay almost. I don't know any Porsche colors, but it's a nice Porsche. So yeah, trying to leverage those scenarios that you can kind of use again as evidence to help kind of build that case. So I would just try to make sure that you're bringing these things up regularly and not waiting until, okay, it's promotion cycle, and like, because the other reality is if you're not really in tune with when that is, like I know at Microsoft, for example, the major promotion cycle, when people actually see their promotions, that's in like September, takes place in September, okay? And the decisions that go into that are like May, like end of May, beginning of June kind of time frame. So then you have all of June, all of July, all of August. It's like 3 months almost. So basically, if someone's trying to say like, oh, like promotions are in September, like I'll wait until, last minute in August to talk about it. Like, look, man, you've already missed the window by months. So it's, and that's the major one. There's other off-cycle ones, but my point is like, it's easy to make mistakes about like trying to time it right. And even if you had the timing right and tried to approach it in May, in my opinion, it would be much more effective to be doing it regularly. And again, that's a good opportunity for corrective feedback along the way. So, okay, like, so you wait the 12 months before you kind of go back to your manager and kind of showcase all these things that your manager happened to not see. The entire time they might have been saying, hey, go mentor more junior engineers, like keep doing this, keep doing this. And you're like, okay, I have been doing it, but for some reason they don't have insight into it. And then you tell them, they might have been like, man, like, I wish you would have done that less. Like, I didn't realize you were doing it so much, and there were these other opportunities we could have moved to. So I just think it's a good practice to try doing things more frequently. Obviously, I know that sounds a little exaggerated, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so if it's not draft emails, because I want to go back to like implementation of this, that was one example. You could take notes. Like I said, I use notes for some things like to-do lists, but for milestones, not really. For me on milestones, it's a little bit different because I'll be working with my product owners more regularly now. We're probably doing more like newsletter updates. It's kind of a new thing for me in my organization, but like that might be a tool that I can use to say, hey, look, like if I go reflect on the newsletter updates that I put out about what my team has accomplished, like those are they're like even more leveled up deliverables and milestones, right? So like that would probably be beneficial for me to go look through and get a history of that. Right now, it's not consistent enough, so that might be a good opportunity going forward. But right now, not a perfect solution. And we'll get one more lane over here. Okay, and then another thing this is a pretty common one, and I was kind of waiting towards the end of this video to talk about it because it's got a bit of a weird name, and I'm not a fan of the name, but this is how it's known. It's called a brag document. The reason I don't like brag documents, and like the naming at least, is that I think that has for me it's hard to look past the name of it, and I was raised like bragging is an absolute no-no. Like, don't do that. Like, people don't like being around other people that brag. Like, so I don't want to be in a position where I'm telling people, hey, use a brag document, because the connotation of that to me is already off-putting. Seems like a small nuanced detail, I get it, but like it kind of is off-putting for me because I don't want people to think that they're bragging. I think you can absolutely talk about your accomplishments without bragging. Like, bragging to me has, again, might just be me, I don't know, has a negative connotation to it. And being proud about something or speaking like totally, I don't know, accurately about your accomplishments without having to like exaggerate them and boast about them, I think is fair. So the road just got pretty crappy here in terms of visibility. It's funny. I'm saying pretty crappy here as in like I didn't live my whole life in Canada. This is actually nothing, but in terms of how people are driving and stuff, I can already kind of sense that like people have slowed down to like 40 on the highway in the fast lane. It's people aren't equipped to drive here with any snow. I'm driving a rear-wheel drive rocket ship, but we're doing it. This is when the Audi would not be good in this either. Actually, I was going to say this is where the Audi would be good with the Quattro, but the back wheels are like 13. They're like 13 and a half inches wide. So like they're they're like big snowshoes that would be just floating on top of everything. So not really good for driving in the winter. But so brag documents are this idea. They're a little bit more structured, I would say, but kind of the same idea where you're talking about your accomplishments. And you can find, like, the reason I'm bringing it up is because you can look for templates and stuff online. If you're like, I don't know what that is, or it sounds interesting, but how do I use it? Search for brag document. I have on my digital products page, I have a free one. So if you want to see one, you can go to devleader.ca. Said I'm from Canada, right? And then at the top, there's a products menu. It'll take you to a site called Gumroad, which is where it's a popular digital products platform, but it's free, so you can go check out. I call it Highlight Tracker. I think it says brag document / highlight tracker. I like calling it a highlight tracker instead, because that's what I want you to be thinking about, tracking your highlights, your milestones, not necessarily bragging. But there's a template there. It's broken into different sections. You can talk about, your mentorship milestones, your different deliverables and stuff like that. And I kind of broke it out into different categories that they're things that I would be talking to my engineers about, like, hey, like, it would be good to grow in this area or to put focus in this area. So they're aligned to, right now, it's not like it's aligned to Microsoft necessarily, but definitely inspiration from the stuff I talk about with my engineers at Microsoft. So if you want, you can check that out as a template. It's it's just a starting point. I don't think there's a perfect way to do it that's going to work for everyone. So check it out if you want. Like I said, it's absolutely free at devleader.ca. I think the other URL to access it even quicker is just products.devleader.ca. And just look for brag document or highlight tracker. There's plenty of different examples online. That's why, I'm not selling mine, because, why? It's just it's a tool. It's literally, once you see it, you'll be like, oh, that's not that crazy. Yep, it's not meant to be. That's why it's free. It's just a PDF or a Word document version that you can get. And you might look at it and say, oh, now I have some ideas for how I would like to do this for myself. And that's great. Please feel free to go make your own. I say that about a lot of resources I try to offer. Here's a starting point. Make it your own, because you'll probably find it better to use if you custom tailor it for yourself. But you can use something like a highlight tracker the same way, just for a little bit more structure in your milestone tracking. You can go bring that into your conversations with your manager. Something that I was thinking about this actually, on the conversations with your manager to talk about this stuff. Something that I like personally is, I'm the kind of person that likes having time to process things. So, for example, if on the spot in a meeting, in a one-on-one, I have an employee that says to me, hey, could you give me feedback? Whoa, we're sliding. Woo. Come on, winter tires, let's go. It's just slush here. Crazy. I like time to process stuff. So if someone says, can you give me feedback? It's if we weren't already talking about feedback and I'm put on the spot to give some, now I'm how do I give meaningful feedback without having time to think about it? And I would say the same type of thing, if you have notes. It's super slick here. This is nuts. And there are winter tires on this car. Okay, we're gonna pull into this parking lot. We're going slow enough, but if I slam the brakes on, I bet you will just slide. Let's see. We're not gonna try that. Yeah, it's so, the snow is so wet. But we're underground, we made it. Let's see if the camera made it. But I think if you can, I would try to give your manager some warning, hey, I've been taking some notes, can we talk about these next time? Send them over ahead of time, maybe you have a summary or something that you can share. I think for me, I would love that. I would love that, so I have some time to kind of prepare mentally about what we're going to talk about. But that's me. So sorry that was maybe a little scatterbrained. I'm super nervous to go check and see if I still have a camera on top of my car. I'm very anxious to go walk outside and be there's, $1,000 or half $1,000 gone, but we'll see. Hopefully that helps. If you have questions about, more specifically about how to track, what to track, how to have those conversations, leave comments below. The more specific you are about like, hey, like what about this scenario? I feel like the better advice I can give. Otherwise, you kind of get a video like this. It's a little bit generic, but I hope there's still at least some tidbits in there about how I like to approach this stuff and how I work with my engineers. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.